Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today my review of a wonderfully complete novel, An Old Captivity by Nevil Shute. So this is the second of the books I've read in a series I'm doing where I'm buddy reading with my dad his 12 favourite books. So we're doing one a month throughout 2025. And I loved this book. I thought this was a really wonderful book. It's one of those novels that's not terribly big, but feels like it packs a huge amount in, a huge amount of kind of tension and adventure, but also a huge amount of emotion and humanity. It really is a lovely, lovely book. So let me tell you about it in this review. But before I start, I'm going to talk very quickly about Nevil Shute. So Nevil Shute was actually, his full name was Nevil Shute Norway. He was born in 1899 and died in 1960. And he published, I think, about 25 novels. This particular one came out in 1940. So his first book, his first novel was published in the mid-20s. This won't be the last time you hear Nevil Shute's name on the channel. We've got two other Nevil Shute books queued up for this buddy reading project. My dad is a really big fan of Nevil Shute. Nevil Shute, as well as being an author, was an aeronautical engineer, and that definitely comes out in this book. So there's a lot in this book about flight and about planes, and I think it's a reasonably common theme in Shute's books. I think a lot of his books do feature that as as part of the plot. He was born in England but died in Australia, so he lived in Australia for the latter part of his life, and his most famous book probably is A Town Like Alice, which is indeed set in Australia. So let me tell you what An Old Captivity is about. So it's about a guy called Ross, who is a pilot, and he's hired by a guy who's an archaeologist to fly him and his daughter to Greenland, so from the UK to Greenland, to take aerial photographs of Greenland. So the archaeologist has a theory that he's trying to prove, and in order to do that, he needs these aerial photographs. And that really is what the book is about. The Wikipedia entry for Nevil Shute says that a common theme in his books is the dignity of work. And that definitely came through in An Old Captivity. It's very much about a book about a guy doing his job. So Ross, this pilot, is doing the job of taking taking his passengers on this expedition. And the first, almost like the whole first half of the book really, is taken up with the preparation for the expedition. So there is loads of detail about like him choosing the right plane and purchasing that plane and equipping that plane and things like that. There's a ton of detail which is really, really fascinating. And that might feel like it would drag a bit, like you'd be waiting for the action to happen. But actually there's something about the way in which Shute writes that really takes you along with the story. You are really invested in Ross's mission to set the expedition up as perfectly as possible. So it was really, really interesting hearing how he goes about that activity of preparation. I've said on the channel before that I think dad books tend to be, or are often, books that are about people doing their jobs, people who are good at their jobs doing those jobs well. If you think of like cowboy books, detective books, war books, that is a common theme. They're about people working, and that is definitely the case with An Old Captivity, and I really enjoy this kind of book. Interestingly, it opens with Ross in a bar having a conversation with someone and telling them the story. So you know right from the start that Ross is going to survive. So whilst there is some tension and peril in the book, you have that reassurance from the start that he will get through it okay. And there's a kind of coziness to it as a result. I would almost call this a cozy adventure story. It's quite, it feels quite low stakes at times. There's no bad guys in this book. They are just going on this expedition, flying from the UK to Greenland and doing their aerial photography. But there is an element that Nevil Shute very cleverly builds into it that is kind of about Ross's character. So about his determination to do a good job, which causes him to push himself a bit. And that is where some of the tension in the book comes in. And in the second half, there's definitely more of that tension. The book still has a real warmth to it though, even when there's tension. A lot of the book is about the relationship between the three people in the plane. So between the archaeologist and Ross, and in particular between Ross and the daughter. And that again is really beautifully handled. There's some wonderful dialogue scenes, and you really get a sense of all three of these characters and of their friendship, their relationship growing as the book progresses. So for quite a lot of the book, it feels like the plot is the progress of the expedition. So the preparation for the expedition and then the progress of it. And then right near the end, the book goes in a very, very different direction. And this is something which is almost jarring at first. It's quite surprising. But Nevil Shute handles it beautifully, and that diversion towards the end of the book really ends up being what the book is about. As my dad said in a conversation I had with him about it, it's like the heart of the book is what happened towards the end. I'm not going to tell you what that is, and certainly I've seen some blurbs of this book that spoil the end, so do try and avoid those. If you're going to read this book, I would definitely recommend going into it blind, because I felt the way that Shute changed the direction of the book and brought everything together at the end was the real joy of this book. I was enjoying it a lot as I was reading it, but after I'd finished it, I realised that I'd fallen in love with it as a book. It really is just perfect. So those are my thoughts on An Old Captivity by Nevil Shute. Definitely a great second instalment for my Buddy Reading with My Dad project. Do let me know in the comments if you've read it. Let me know if you're a fan of Nevil Shute. And as always, thanks very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.